Farming is one of the oldest things that we human beings have done. It has allowed civilizations to settle and grow, and even today, it is the backbone of how we survive. But somewhere along the line, it has changed. We went from working with nature to trying to outsmart it with synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, hybrid seeds, machines, and lot more. So it has become less about nurturing and more about extracting. And the consequences are catching up to us. We see degraded soil, we see water shortage, pollution, poor health of consumers and farmers, and even climate change. All of this is linked directly or indirectly to how we grow our food. And what is powerful is that the solution isn't some high tech futuristic fix. It is here, it has been here for a while, and it is natural farming. Now, you and I did visit a farm a few years ago. This was near Kurnool, where we saw the farmer try natural farming on one side of the farm. There was a road in between and conventional on the other side. Now, this was a pilot for him, but we could see the difference on how green the natural farming side was. The smell was different, the soil was different. You have been to a lot more farms than I have. What is your experience when you set foot on a farm where natural farming is done versus a farm where conventional farming occurs?
Yes, I have had lot of experience uh, being in this field, to distinguish when we walk into any farm. Why walk into any farm? From a distance itself, I could make out that a particular farm, the methodology, it was very different from the other farms. I had an occasion to join my colleague in a place. It is a border which is bordering Kerala. So there they have a farm, and they invited me to be a part of their, stay with them and teach them some techniques, natural farming techniques. That's how when I was approaching the farm, I could see that there was a very distinct difference between the other farms and his farm. And then later on, when you step into the farm, you do make out so much of a difference is there, as you said, the smell, the greenery, the everything is different. When you walk on the farm, the soil itself, you feel it very different. You feel that it is like as though you're walking on a sponge. The soil structures, texture, everything has changed. It's the methodology that has changed the soil. And when I noticed further, I could see a lot more differences there than that was visible in a farm where conventional agriculture was being practiced.
Let's go through the resources one by one. And very often, farming is associated with consumption. Of course, we consume the outputs of farming, but farming in itself is seen to be taking so many vital resources. So let's start with water. We often see farms and agriculture being water guzzlers, and this is a big concern. But what is the difference, and why is it that conventional farming requires more water, whereas natural farming requires relatively less amount of water?
See, world over, conventional farming is being practiced. And 70% of the water consumption, I mean, 70%, the agriculture sector consumes water more than any other sector globally. And it draws the fresh water. That's the main problem here. And then not only, for irrigating your farms, but also for application of the pesticides, application of the fertilizers. Then they use it for cleaning their livestock, for so many things, even after harvesting. So there are some processes where water is used to cool the produce. So water is being used left, right, center. And in conventional agriculture, it's a very big water guzzler, because when we adopted conventional agriculture, there we have made sure that we are going for a high yielding variety. And we even changed the irrigation method. We brought in different methodology of irrigating our farms. So that is how, and we chose certain varieties which consume more water in conventional agriculture. So when you see all these things, you do understand that the conventional farming requires a lot of water. Whereas when you talk about natural farming, with our experience, we have seen that the water consumption reduction has come down drastically to say one-fifth of what the water consumption is there in a conventional farming methodology. That is because the methodology here is very, very different. When you, the first thing what I always say is when the soil structure, texture changes, and the soil health improves, automatically the soil becomes so porous. Now we have made the soil so compact now. Whatever rain that falls on the land, it simply within few, nowadays we have seen this, the everywhere. It's just raining in 1 hour, the whole 1 week's rain just falls and goes, you know. It's like that. So when it pours, it just pours and there is no way of containing that water. So when you make the soil porous by this natural farming methodology, automatically the water will percolate into the soil, and the water retention capacity of the soil increases. When it increases, automatically your aquifers, your water, groundwater, tables, they all increase. It's not just one, you see. So it's not just your farming, you are even increasing your water levels. Now, water is such a scarce commodity which should be used very judiciously. And what we observed in natural farming is that can be achieved when we adopt this methodology of farming in this manner, where you put lot of organic matter, you improve your soil health, and then automatically you retain lot of water within the soil and underneath in the water tables they increase, and then you enable the plant to go far and wide because you have made the soil so loose and porous that it can go far and wide in search of water and nutrients. So this is the basic difference. That's why when I said in my earlier thing that when you walk on a natural farming farm, the soil would have become so loose and porous that you feel that you're walking on a sponge. This is the That's why I said the whole thing changes here. That is how when you can conserve this water, when there is a heavy downpour or a normal rain also, instead of the water and the nutrients getting washed away from the farm, you retain that within your farm. And then what else you want? There is water, you have stored water underneath. So this is how we have seen. And there are other things also as we talk, I will explain how natural farming consumes less water. There are other methodology that not only improving the soil by putting organic matter, but also selecting the inputs. That also matters a lot. What type of seeds you are selecting, whether it's hybrid seeds or you're going for a yield variety, or though you are going for a yield variety, what are the other methodology that you do to retain water?
I have a follow-up question to what you mentioned. So natural farming, yes, the soil does have percolation and water goes through and water retains. But on the other side, why does this not happen with conventional farming?
Because, see, in conventional farming, you put all the fertilizers, that is, your chemical fertilizers, then you spray chemical pesticides, they use weedicides, all are made up of chemical. Now, in this chemical fertilizers, there are some mineral salts. These mineral salts, they make the soil compact. Now, for example, you pour water on your floor where you are sitting. Where does this water go? It cannot go anywhere. It will remain there. You'll slip and fall, right? But you have made your farm like this flooring so hard, so compact. That is the reason why if there is a heavy downpour or a normal rain, the farms are not able to retain the water. That's the main thing. That's the problem here. And not only that, it inhibits the root growth also. When the soil is so compact, the roots are not able to grow and reach far and wide when there is a deficiency of water or nutrients. You are not enabling the plant to grow properly. When the root system grows, you know, nicely, only then the shoot system will grow. This is a common sense when we all learned when we were small children in school, right? But what has happened is this conventional agriculture methodology has made everything so very different that even we are not able to know why it is happening.
So on one hand, we have hybrid varieties of crops being put in, whether it's rice, wheat, or any other produce across the globe. These require more water than what would have been grown naturally. And the other part is that the use of fertilizers is, in a way, hardening the soil. So water doesn't percolate, it basically flows through. And now you need more water, which you could have achieved the same with less amount. So that is one of the ways in which we see more amount of water requirement, and agriculture in itself needs water. But now when the soil is hardened and you have chemicals which are hardening the soil, we need much more larger quantities of water. And that in a way explains why there is a requirement so high, and how natural farming can be a solution and we can reduce the usage of water. So you mentioned the soil hardening because of the chemicals, and soil health is one of the key factors. It's the other resource you can say when it comes to agriculture. Even if we go back to our school, it is water, sunlight, and nutrients that we are all taught. So speaking about the soil, what is the impact of all of the chemicals when it comes to soil? Of course, it hardens the soil as we just spoke, but we also see farmers dumping large quantities of fertilizers with the hope that more fertilizers is equal to more yield, but we see that the soil becomes weak and even barren. So, what exactly is going on here when it comes to the soil health?
Yeah. See, soil is it's an anchor for the plant. Okay. Where you, me, so plants, animals, everybody are there. And soil is not what we all think. It is made up of so many things. It is mineral matter, organic matter, water, air, everything. See, now we say we stuck gas in a kg basin. Okay. So, what does it mean? There is natural gas within your earth surface. So, everything put together is what you see, your earth surface, and that is soil. And then they provide anchorage to the plants, right? So, in order to make them grow, we are putting all sorts of things, whether it is natural farming, you put the manure, the compost, the biopesticides, I mean the biofertilizers, which you, in natural, of course, it's all the natural constituents with which it is made and put. Whereas when you talk about conventional farming, you put all the chemical fertilizers, chemical pesticides, weedicides, growth promoters, so many things you dump, right? See, when you talk about a farmer, now as on today, more chemicals have been added to the soil and the plant is not able to absorb anymore. We have come to that stage now. So there was a roundtable conference which I attended. In that, it was clearly said by one of the speakers that we have dumped more than 10 times the requirement into the soil, and the plants are not able to take it. So we have reached that stage. Now, why is it so? Because nobody told the farmer about this. The farmer does it because it is his livelihood. It is, if he and what he understands is, if I put more, I will get yield more. Or if there is a failure on account of erratic weather pattern, he is so much disturbed and he does not know what to do. He knows only one thing, that is put more. When he is spraying pesticides and the pest doesn't go, what he thinks is, where he is prescribed only 1 or 2% to be sprayed, he goes all the way out to spray even more than 10%. That is, he is trying to secure his livelihood. That is the thing. And there is a lot of gap between the knowledge of this kind, and it doesn't percolate to the farmer at all. And nobody gives him that assurance and confidence so that he, you know, overcomes that kind of a situation by following some other methodology. He doesn't have that kind of a confidence. So, unless you instill that confidence in him and say, okay, you switch over to some other methodology which will work for you. So, that's why the farmer is desperate. In a desperate mode, he puts more. And another reason for this is, when you see the pesticide market, it's a huge market that we have here. And there, the farmer doesn't get the actual pesticides. Sometimes he gets spurious pesticides. Now he is forced to spray more than what is required because it doesn't work anyway. The spurious chemicals, fertilizers and pesticides, they don't work. So this kind of a scenario, the farmer is forced to put more than what is required.
There isn't a solution being offered to the farmer as such. Like from what I understand is that it's very similar to us going to a doctor, and I think at some point of the other we've used painkillers or opioids, and every time this increase the dosage from 100 mg to whatever mg, and it goes on, but there isn't a final solution. So in a way, the farmer is again adding more and more chemicals to the same land, expecting a different outcome, where in a way they have maxed out on the soil and what is happening over there. So there isn't a solution which is be given. And like you said, the spurious chemicals also is something that I did not think about, which makes sense when you say it. But yes, I can sure. And I think for those who are listening, probably somebody is saying, "Hey, there is hydroponics which is in play." But that is such a small amount. It is probably a percentage of a percentage, and globally, it might not amount to a lot, but yes, for sure, making the land barren in some situations and not getting yield is not the way to go. And speaking of soil health, so we said earlier on, soil becomes hard and now the fertility is gone. And the other thing that we don't consider, particularly when we talk about climate change. Now, agriculture is associated with climate change. There are so many emissions which come out at various stages and processes. But what we also don't often factor is that after the oceans, land is a huge carbon sink, and it absorbs a lot of gases for which the soil has to be porous. Like you said, for water, it also has to be porous so that it takes in the carbon which is there. So, how do you see carbon sequestration happening, or some of the greenhouse gases being absorbed in soil traditionally now not happening because of conventional farming?
The same thing as we spoke about water, the water is able to percolate when the soil is porous. So it's the same thing with the air too. If the way air will enter, air will circulate, or the gases in the air will circulate only when there is porosity. If you make everything tight and compact and shut everything down, well, that's why sustainable agriculture is the key or the answer for carbon sequestration or decarbonization, whatever you may call. Because see, land is the second biggest carbon sink, the largest after the oceans. So when the land, you enable the land to be, if you harden the land in any form, for example, I was doing a project on wetlands, and there I saw lot of encroachment had happened, lot of buildings have come up. So what do you do when you do building? You put construction material there and you make a building. So what you do is ultimately you make the land hard. That is what the wetlands are supposed to be have become hard. Now they are no longer a carbon sink. Otherwise, wetlands are very big carbon sink. Similarly, soil. You have put lot of fertilizers, chemicals, not only agriculture. You look at the industries, how much of affluence from the industry flow. And everything, if we are going to go this way, there is no way to put back things. So, somewhere we need to start and come back to our roots and try to understand. Do use technology, but use your traditional knowledge also. We are endowed with so much of knowledge in this particular field that we can do sustainable agriculture using all the organic waste and then make your soil more porous. That is how emissions can be absorbed. I had written one paper on decarbonization with natural farming. So our country is also aiming that. That's why they are going in such a big manner, uh, taking natural farming as a mission, natural farming for, national mission for natural farming. That's how they have come up and they aim to control these emissions in this manner.
Right. So on one hand, because of all the construction and or even going back a step further, so land is a huge carbon sink. So one, with all the development construction, we are hardening the land, having structures in place. So we are not letting that process happen. And on the other hand, if you look at a global picture, the amount of land that is taken for agriculture is huge. It is quite significant. Even though it is open and exposed, because of all the chemicals that we use, now the soil is hardened and now it's not letting that process happen where it can normally sequester carbon. So more emissions do come from the process, but now that is not going into the land. And also I want to mention, like along this conversation, when we talk about natural farming, there is the use of pesticides and fertilizers which are naturally prepared. There are many methodologies, there are many processes, which is a deeper conversation to be had. It's more structured and there's a process in place for that. I think sometimes the confusion is that, hey, natural farming means we are not using pesticides or fertilizers. We are not using synthetic ones and ones made of chemicals, which cause all of these problems. Now, we started talking by our experiences on setting foot on a farm where natural farming happens versus one where conventional farming happens. And we kind of saw how the soil is porous, it's a little bouncy, the smell is different. But from your experience, there also is an impact it has on not just the plants, not just farmers or people, but the biodiversity. All the way from the earthworms to the birds to the monkeys, their natural habitat also gets impacted. So, what do you see the impact of conventional farming on biodiversity versus what natural farming can do to support biodiversity?
Yeah, one point of the earlier one I would like to mention and then come to this. See, in natural farming, see what we do is we take all the natural constituents like the leaves, the animal waste, and the plant waste. It's all totally animal waste and plant waste. That's how we do natural farming here in this part of the world. But in this, there is a difference again between organic and natural because again we are not burning any fossil fuel here. We are not manufacturing it, the biofertilizers, the biopesticides in any factory. It's not synthetically made. So there also you are not emitting. See, emissions are controlled there or it is under control. So this is another factor which I would like to say. And coming to the biodiversity, I hope you remember when you visited the farm with me and we had gone to a place where we were roped in specifically to restore a particular bird, the Indian bustard bird, which used to come to that lake in that particular place in Karnool, where the birds used to visit during their, migratory birds. They used to come during a season and then they used to depart. But then the government felt over a period of time, the number of the birds from few thousands had come to single digit. So that worried the government and they made a deep analysis study into this as to why it's happening. They came to know ultimately there were many things that they thought of. They thought it was the fox that was eating the eggs of the birds. They thought it was the snakes that was gobbling the eggs or many other things, but nobody's attention went to the soil from where the birds were picking the worms. And this soil was heavily coated with chemicals, and the birds were picking up worms, which were again totally coated with the chemicals. That is how the birds were dying. So, this is, to listen to it's like a story, but you see the underlying thing how much of chemicals we would have put to make a bird, Indian bustard bird, like bird, to die. Then finally, they had given this project to one of the solar companies there who were having large solar farms. And they roped in saying that we'll find a solution. And that is how the project started. And all the villages adjoining that lake, there we gave this orientation on natural farming. Then we went on to take them for certification and things like that, hand holding them. And finally, I was so happy to hear, though the project got over and we are not no longer there. But when we hear from the people that the number of birds visiting that lake have increased, it really makes me feel very happy because that initiative has paid off now. So, this is an example of one bird, but there are so many microorganisms in the soil. The soil is made up of so many things. Just I mentioned about the minerals, the fiber, the natural gas, the water. But apart from that, The soil hosts a lot of life into that. And when we say there is a bounce in the soil when you walk on a sustainable farm or a natural farming practicing farmer's farm, you see the bounce because there are a lot of organisms and life that is moving in the soil, whether it is centipede, millipede, or microorganisms that which you cannot see with your naked eye, or you see the earthworms, the scorpions. So many things are there out there. But unfortunately, as we mentioned about the Indian busted bird, similar thing here. We don't see earthworms. We don't see any of these insects. We don't even see snakes visiting the farm. So that is the scenario right now. What do you infer from this? It's the same. What killed the Indian busted bird? It has killed everybody here. So we have lost biodiversity, all all the biodiversity in the soil, and we have lost the biodiversity above the soil too. No birds fly on your farm because you are spraying so much of pesticides. Nobody can survive except the farmer, and at what cost? At his own cost. I have seen many farmers suffering from various diseases, skin irritability, women farmers, having, a lot of miscarriages, irritation, then white patches on their skin, then diarrhea. So many have witnessed all these things. And then, apart from that, once I was going to a place where I was supposed to be teaching there this natural farming methodology, and we were invited by a rice mill owner. That was supposed to be the rice bowl of Karnataka. That was a place I visited, Gangavati, and they hosted me. They put me in their guest house. The moment I entered the guest house, it was stinking of what? Of endosulfan. And when I opened the tap, the water was also, the same smell, endosulfan smell. And endosulfan is one of the chemicals that had been banned long time ago by our government. They were using DDT and endosulfan extensively. So this is the plight of our farms and farmers. So that's how it is. That's how we have lost everything now. But when the methodology is switched over to, they switch over to natural farming, when they come back to this, we see very quickly all the things coming back. The life in the soil coming back. I normally say the biological aspect of the soil that comes back. The soil becomes once more alive and moving. The life moves in the soil, and then we see host of other things coming on the top of the soil. All the birds come, return, they make nest in the on the trees, they lay eggs. It's such a beautiful sight to see when you see all these things. So that is how it works.
Like you said, it's not just the soil; it also is the air around it, which also now has chemicals in it. Water which runs off from that particular land also carries this, and that goes into the nearby water bodies, lakes and rivers. So it adds on to the pollution which is there. And we've seen so much coverage and importance being given on honeybees and how they are play a key role in farming and agriculture. Even they get impacted, so that natural process and so many more get impacted. And like you said, the health. Now, farmers' health, they are constantly exposed to these dangerous chemicals. And I would urge people to look at some of the companies which have started manufacturing this, what was their previous business, let's say around World War II and that era, and go down that rabbit hole and see where this process comes from. These chemicals, most of them are carcinogenic. It has a huge impact on the farmers, their health, even the next generations of farmers and their families. As a consumer, now you and I also know that there's a hospital nearby, gastrointestinal. There are so many cases which are increasing because of the food that we eat. So anything laden with chemicals, grown with chemicals, has an impact on us consumers as well. And this is a huge issue. Now, my question is, like you said, farmers, when they see yield not coming, they add more chemicals, and that is suggested or advised. But farmers also, in some of the conversation that we have, they follow practices which probably their fathers have practiced or they follow practices which their peers are practicing. Farmers are saying that there are generational practices that they follow. If you logically see generational practices should be natural farming, then where along the line did all of these chemicals and these practices come into play?
Yeah, you know all these. You also know that there was a time when we used to borrow food to feed our population way back in 1960s. So 60s to 1971, we had a very bad period. At that time, we had to feed our population. So there was a conscious decision taken by our government to bring in this green revolution. With green revolution came the chemical fertilizers, the pesticides, the high yielding varieties, the change in the irrigation system, so many things. The what we call the water guzzler crops, all this came along with that. Prior to that, yes, what you said was right. But after that, things changed. Now again, things are changing. So we are now likely to take a U turn much before we hit a roadblock there. So probably that's for good, and it is certainly for good, not probably, because we have seen what havoc it played, the chemical fertilizers, the pesticides. It has just ruined everything.
Yeah.
Not only the land, the water, the air, the space, all the five elements, what we consider as the basis of this creation and in which we are living and we are also made up of. Not only disturbing those, but disturbing even those elements in our body. That's what is it's happening. And we have seen a host of diseases that has come up over a period of time now. Infertility has become just a common thing now. Then obesity, PCOD, so many things, cancer, so no mental disease, everything is linked to this food that we are consuming because ultimately it is food that goes inside your body. You can change your clothes or you can change anything that is external, but once the food goes inside your body, it becomes a part of your body.
Yeah. And the other thing is when, if we kind of go back to the farmers using chemicals and if we look at the financial aspect of this, so there's a lot of money spent in purchasing hybrid seeds, which then do not give more seeds. So these plants cannot, in the traditional way, you will have seeds coming out of those fruits and vegetables, which you can then use. So that is kind of taken off the picture. You also spend a lot of money in terms of fertilizers and pesticides. So there's a huge cost involved for farmers. And then when you see the land becoming barren, yield coming down, more chemicals are added, and that also leads them to going into financial debt. And we also see a lot of unfortunate incidents happen in the terms of suicides, along with all the health complications that they are facing from the constant exposure of chemicals. So finances also play a huge role, whereas natural farming, the ingredients, like you said before, are all available on a farmland or should be available on a farmland and doesn't take a lot of investment in having them and even using them. So there's a huge cost difference which is also experienced, which helps the farmer's livelihood along with helping with their health, the environment, biodiversity, water, and all of that. And like you said before, of us taking a U-turn, we are seeing a change happen. We, in a way, hit rock bottom and probably are now taking a different direction. I want to ask you about some of the ways in which we as consumers or anybody listening out there can also be part of the change and what they can do so that we have more natural farming systems across the globe and we support this process instead of conventional farming.
It is always the demand that drives anything for that matter. So, right now, there are institutions, organizations, NGOs out there, government, all of us promoting natural farming. And you and me as consumers and as well as, promoters, we are also sitting here and talking about it. Like this, there is a huge movement in our country right now. But the thing is that demand should come from the consumer. The consumer should become more aware now. the awareness should reach, to a very higher level than what it is right now. It is just touch the surface. I feel it has just touched the surface now. So it has to go beyond this. Consumer should wake up and see what is happening to him, understand his own body and how different it is behaving than what it should have been. Then you understand and become more aware as to from where your food is coming to you. Okay. So when you go and have a cup of tea, you're totally clueless from where your tea powder has come or tea leaves have come. You do not know from where the milk has come originated, or the water for that matter, or the sugar that you add, all these things. So when you are so clueless about a cup of tea, forget about the other things, so many things we eat all through the day. So this is how a consumer should become more and more aware. And second thing, he should also understand whether he is eating nutritious food. That matters a lot. Becoming more aware of its origin is one thing, that is traceability, that can be taken care in the process. But is it full of nutrition, or it's just that, they say food security, we have secured the food, but did we secure the nutrition? Absolutely no. There is no nutrition in the food. I was reading one research paper, it was published in 2003, that says that there is cobalt in the soil, but the plant is not able to absorb it. Why? So, as I said earlier, lot of chemical fertilizers have been put, but the plant is not able to absorb. Now, the research says it is because of the hybrid seeds that they have used. Now, this hybrid seed does not have the ability to absorb the micronutrient, that is a cobalt. And when there is no cobalt in the plant, there is no B12 in your diet. Now, see how interlinked it is. And we all go, everybody, all of us go and take supplements. We all take shots D3. We lack almost all these, which are vital to our existence here. We cannot do our work unless we are strong enough, energetic enough. If we don't have that energy, then what is that your food is giving you? So, in this way, and we should spend some time, all of us as consumers should really become more and more aware as to what is that you are consuming, what is that is going inside your body. You are so very particular what dress you wear, what perfume you spray, what TV you purchase, what car you drive, what computer you are using, what mobile you are using, but when it comes to food, you don't want to see. That's the tragedy here. And even if you want to see, it is very difficult to see. There is a big, thick veil. You have to penetrate that veil and see. And instead of all that, I'll tell you one simple thing. You adopt a farmer who is practicing natural or sustainable agriculture. You pick him up, you put your trust in him and let him also trust you. Supply to you and to a couple of your family members or your friends. That is how you can encourage them to grow naturally, and that is how you can get your nutrition. This is the only way out. As a consumer, you should demand. There should be a demand. There should be so many platforms where you should, voice your opinion and say, I have every right to demand a nutritious, chemical free food. If we do not start this, nobody is going to talk on our behalf. It is we who should initiate and then demand from the party. Only then the governments will change. Everybody will change. Though our government has taken a very big step, and I'm very, very happy because we have been promoting way back from, decades, this sustainable agriculture. But only now we see that light at the end of the tunnel. We feel that we have reached the end of the tunnel. I really do not know if we have to pass through some more, you know, some more, our journey would be a little longer. We don't mind, but at least we see a ray of hope now that somebody with responsibility, they are promoting this, and we all are very happy to be a part of it. And talking like this and trying to bring awareness, I would be very, very happy to do more and more work in this particular area, because this is a very much required thing as of now.
I think something to think about is One, on the farmer's side, when you see farmers now being dependent on purchasing chemicals for fertilizers and pesticides, purchasing seeds, something as basic as a seed taken from a plant is not giving you a plant. So you're going to buy more seeds from a seed bank or somebody who's selling. It shows you how tethered and tied up they are kept so that they are being dependent. And consumers from our side, when we consume food which does not have nutrition, now we have to depend on taking supplements and so many other medicines. We are seeing diabetes cases. It is something to think about. It's not just the farmers on that side, but even the consumers who, this might sound a little fringe, but it's also how, in a way, we could possibly be tethered to some of these systems in place. Now, we spoke about our experiences stepping on a farm with chemicals, without chemicals. We've also, when you consume food which has been grown without chemicals, it was easier to find a few years ago, now a little tricky. But if you consume food which has been naturally grown, you experience a difference. The taste is different, the flavor is different, you feel different. Or if you travel to a country where the regulations are much more stringent, like some of the EU countries or Singapore or some other places, you see the difference, even as something as basic as a potato might taste and feel a little different than you travel to a country where the regulations are not so stringent and a little loose. And you can experience the difference yourself. If you get used to the healthier one, your body will ask for that, and you can feel that. On the other hand, to your point of adopting a farmer, sometimes we feel this is a huge problem and we are overwhelmed, and we get back to our world thinking that there are governments and agencies which will solve this. There are things that we can do, adopting a farmer, or we've seen how families pool together and there's a farmer who supplies them so that it's naturally grown produce you consume. If you live in a part of the world where there's a farmer's market or something grown locally, seasonally, try to consume that, try to purchase that. Even online, you can look for options where there are certifications which say that, hey, this is grown naturally without the use of chemicals. All in all, finding ways to promote it, maybe in a cafeteria, school cafeteria, or an office cafeteria. You can, if you're an admin, maybe have conversations on how we can have food based on produce which has been naturally grown. There are so many things that you and I can also start doing. You can take it a step further. If you're part of the farming community, you can start growing naturally. And we have seen how farmers who are a little hesitant start, like, with a proof of concept, a small piece of land, and then they start expanding. You could do that. You could also have your own balcony garden, a terrace garden, a vegetable patch in the backyard. And there are so many other benefits which come by growing your own food. That's always an option. There are so many other things that you and I can do so that we encourage natural farming, support the farmers. And like you said, the more we ask for these things, we drive the market demand, and that also generally gets catered to. So, kind of closing out this conversation, we've seen how all the way from reducing the usage of water to improving soil health to carbon sequestration to improving the health of farmers to improving our own health, there are so many things that we can do. There are multiple sustainable development goals which also get impacted because of natural farming, and in the long run it can help with food security, nutritional security, and so much more. So as we close out this conversation, any last thoughts before we end this and move to something else?
Yeah. Only thing I can say is the indebtedness of the farmer, which we were talking about, that also comes down drastically because the input cost is reduced to a very large extent, where you gather all the natural constituents, what I was mentioning, from your own farm or your neighboring farm, and you make your inputs. So to that extent, the input cost is reduced. As you said, seed. Again, here I would like to mention some of the state governments here, they subsidize, they sell it at a subsidized rate. And but however, you cannot make seed out of those seeds. So it is a farmer who should consciously understand that he should be empowered in he should not depend on anyone from external inputs like hybrid seeds which may yield or may not yield, which may sprout or may not sprout, and ultimately that which does not give you that nutrition. So finally, so he first should be made to understand the income that is there in that, you know, how he can tap into this. So that's the only luring point for us from the farmer's perspective. When you show him income, he naturally agrees to that. And second thing is, an ecosystem should come up. It's not so easy because these all that what we are talking about, making fertilizers, natural chemical, natural pesticides and fertilizers, these things need labor. They are, you need manpower, or the farmer has to sit and grind and do all those processes. So, what I felt was, unless you create the ecosystem and make it available to some extent, at least in the beginning, and then roll it out, then it works very well. That's how, we have given lot of our inputs to the government to during many brainstorming sessions. That is how now it's going to come up very beautifully, because that is how the government has also planned in a similar fashion. But these inputs were given way back in 2016 to some of the state governments who had come up with this plan to roll out this methodology in a very big manner. So everything pays off, and finally, when the input costs are saved, the income, the farmer can see more income. I have seen in a farm where chilies are grown, they spend about 50,000 per acre per season. That's a huge amount. If you have, say, 1 lakh, if you are spending, say, for 3, 4 acres, 2 lakh of rupees, and if there is as we see, so much of a climate erratic pattern of weather everywhere in the world, you see places where it is supposed to be cold, it's become so hot. And we see, after so many years, as we saw in Korea, the heavy rains, or we see in China, we see in our own country, so many places, heavy rain or simply a cloud burst, and so much of loss of lives and livelihoods are happening. If these if this continues, not only rain, during summer we saw the summers, the heat shooting up, this temperature shooting up to 52 degrees. No farmer can go out and do farming. If he doesn't do farming, we will not have food to eat. So all these things, when you take into account, it is the right time. If we do not change now, as producers or traders or consumers or whatever you may call, as all human beings who are eating food, we should be mindful. This is what my closing remark will be. We should be mindful of what we are doing.
Yeah, there are so many primary, secondary, and tertiary effects, and whether we can talk even on the business side of having those ecosystems, and lot more conversations and a lot of talking points for us to get into in the future. In the meantime, we spoke about a few things that you and I can do so that we can support natural farming, for all in all, to have a better planet and better livelihood. So let us know some of your ideas or things that you do in any part of the globe that you are in. How do you support, if you already do, or how are you planning to do some of these things? Do share those with us. And yep, together, having these conversations, more awareness, we can all bring in a lot of change. So until next time, this is both of us signing off. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening.